What's up, fantasy football fanatics? Today, we're diving into the Miami Dolphins and figuring out who you should be keeping an eye on, especially with a massive shadow of Tyreek Hill potentially moving on. Now, let's be real, the path of the Dolphins in fantasy football hasn't been smooth. They were one of the lower-ranking teams in 2024, so drafting their players comes with a proceed with caution label. The first couple weeks of the 2025 season look relatively soft for Miami. They face the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. This could mean some of their players might pop off early and inflate their numbers. But after that, you'll need to scrutinize their stats closely before making any big decisions for your fantasy squad. So, who are the key Dolphins players to consider for your 2025 fantasy football team? 1. Tua Tagovailoa, QB. Tua's constant injury concerns are a major roadblock to him being an elite fantasy quarterback. You'll need to consider drafting him on a week-to-week basis, heavily dependent on his performance and health. He finished as the QB 23 in fantasy last year. While he's shown flashes since entering the league, he hasn't quite solidified himself as a consistent, competitive QB the franchise needs. However, a big plus for 2025 is his continued work with offensive coordinator Frank Smith, who has been with him for 4 years. That continuity is a significant strong point. 2. Devon Achane, RB. Achane was a fantasy stud in 2024 for those who drafted and held on to him. The big question for 2025 is whether he can maintain those impressive numbers. Like any player heavily reliant on their quarterback, his numbers are notable when Tua is healthy. The problem, as we know, is Tua's injury frequency. On the bright side, Achane keeps defenses on their toes with his production in both the running and passing games. A huge plus of fantasy, with the offensive line reportedly working hard this offseason. The hope is that Devon can maintain consistent numbers for the 2025 season. He could be a great pick if things align. 3. Jalen Wright, RB. Wright is currently the second starting running back for the Dolphins, but he could really shine in the 2025 season. Why? Because Devon Achane has shown a tendency to get injured, opening the door for Wright to step up and make an impact when he gets his chance. His reported 3.25 yards after contact could give him unique efficiency and be a differentiating factor. Even with other running backs joining the Dolphins, Wright remains a number 2 on the depth chart. He'll be hoping for considerable improvement from his offensive line to further boost his performance. Keep him on your radar as a high upside handcuff or potential flex play. For Jalen Waddle, WR. Waddle's performance in 2024 wasn't his best, and he likely disappointed fantasy managers who drafted him. But paradoxically, that could be exactly what catapults him to a unique statistical season in 2025, especially if Tyreek Hill is indeed out of the picture. He should still be a solid WR2 for your fantasy team, but his ceiling heavily depends on Tua staying healthy for the entire season. His per-game average was around 3.8 receptions for 49.6 yards, though he did have games where he surpassed 100 yards. If he's utilized more on short routes, he could have better opportunities to rack up receptions and boost his numbers. So, there you have it. A look at some key Miami Dolphins to watch for your 2025 fantasy football drafts. It's a high-risk, potentially high-reward situation. Who are you targeting from the Dolphins this year? Let us know in the comments below. What's up, NFL fans? We've got some intriguing developments in the Jalen Ramsey trade saga. While the Los Angeles Rams were initially seen as frontrunners to reacquire the star cornerback from the Miami Dolphins, it seems their enthusiasm might be waning. Let's break down what's happening. Rams head coach Sean McVay recently spoke to the media during the team's training camp in Hawaii and gave an update on the Ramsey situation. His comments, while not entirely closing the door, sounded a bit less optimistic than before. McVay said, "Typically, those are scenarios and situations where you have to have plans in place before you execute some of the decisions that have occurred. We definitely don't want to rule anything out, because we're always open to integrating and acquiring quality players and people like him if we're able to do that. But there would be some real hurdles that would maybe prevent that from happening." This isn't a drastic change in tune, but it does suggest the Rams are acknowledging significant challenges. Of course, the Rams can't openly say they're desperate for Ramsey, as that would give all the leverage to the Dolphins. who currently have very little. So, what are these real hurdles McVay mentioned? Ramsey's contract. Any team acquiring Ramsey would have to take on his $21 million salary for this season. The Dolphins might need to eat some of that to make a deal happen. However, the Rams only have about $21.8 million in cap space, according to Over the Cap. They're unlikely to want Ramsey to consume virtually all their remaining space, and the Dolphins probably aren't keen on paying a large chunk of his salary for him to play elsewhere. Trade compensation. Miami gave more than a day 3 pick, round 4 to 7. For Ramsey seems like a long shot at this point. The Rams don't even have a 4th round pick in the 2026 NFL draft. While they have 2 5ths and 2 6ths, those might not be enough to entice Miami to make a deal immediately. Future picks versus current window. The Rams could offer future picks, but with a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford, their Super Bowl window is now. They might prefer to keep future draft capital to build around a new quarterback, especially with the 2026 QB class expected to be strong. The Rams hold 2 first-round picks in that 2026 draft, and this long-term thinking could be a major sticking point. This all puts the Miami Dolphins in an incredibly tough spot because they've been so open about wanting to move Ramsey, and with reports of a deteriorating relationship between the player and the team, they've lost almost all negotiating leverage. Miami will likely be more desperate to make a deal than any team they call. What could possibly shift the dynamic in Miami's favor? A preseason injury. If a top cornerback on a contending team goes down, that team might suddenly become very interested in Ramsey. This is why some argue the Dolphins should hold on to him for a while. A more robust market. Right now, there are many teams with both the cap space to absorb Ramsey's contract and a clear need that would make them aggressive suitors. While there have been whispers of other teams, the options seem limited. The Dolphins don't technically need Ramsey's approval for a trade, but any well-run team acquiring him would likely want his buy-in before finalizing a deal, which other teams could theoretically make a play. Carolina Panthers. They have around $18 million in cap space, a need at cornerback, and their 4th round pick. They're pushing to be more competitive. But would Ramsey want to spend one of his prime years on a team without a proven winning track record? Las Vegas Raiders. Similar situation. They have cap space and a need, but they play in a brutal division and aren't exactly proven winners. Despite Pete Carroll's good history, Los Angeles Chargers. They have the cap space, draft picks, and a need for cornerbacks. Plus, they've had more recent success than the Panthers or Raiders. The question is whether the Chargers feel Ramsey is the final piece for a defense that actually played reasonably well with undervalued cornerbacks last season. Ultimately, the Dolphins might just have to wait and hope something breaks their way. Moving on from Ramsey a year early might be better for the locker room atmosphere, but it's unlikely to be a win in terms of trade compensation or immediate on-field performance. What do you think? Are the Rams truly cooling on Ramsey, or is this just negotiation tactics? And where do you see Jalen Ramsey playing next season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.